And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
I mean, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, as Caleb Winston Calhoun coughs us in, welcome to the program. We've got a busy show as the Vols fall short once again, this time to Kentucky. They were double-digit favorites and took about triple-digit three-point attempts. What is up with this basketball team? Are they at a crossroad? Is Rick Barnes about to lose this team? I don't think that is hyperbole. We'll get into that. Also, Jimmy Himes will join us as he does each and every Wednesday. And Tony Jones, our basketball analyst, former associate head coach at the University of Tennessee and Auburn under Bruce Pearl. So we've got a lot to get to today as he is Caleb Calhoun. I'll remind you, the show is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio. So Caleb Calhoun, before we get off and rolling with today's tough question, your thoughts on the Vols and what happened last night in Thompson Bowling Arena. The Vols got sacked in Food City Center.
Oh, like a grocery bag.
There you
Yeah, no, it was embarrassing, and this has all the vibes, Dave, of certain Rick Barnes teams from back in the day that would start off really hot and then fizzle out. It also has the vibe of a very famous Jerry Green team that got up to number 4 and then collapsed at the end of the season. I doubt Rick Barnes will tell Tennessee fans to go to Kmart, but at the same time, the vibe of the team seems similar.
Well, Tennessee fans need to go to Chick-fil-A and get a bag of cash for what they watched last night.
Nice.
Now, let's take a look at the message board. We resemble a church league team as of late. Awful offense. That gets us rolling. It is time for today's tough question. You mentioned Jerry Green. I didn't want to go there because I sometimes feel like the old fuddy-duddy, but there is a correlation there that I want to address. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
We'll make it our poll question, and it's pretty simple. Is Rick Barnes losing his team? Caleb, I'll throw out a couple of reasons why. Number one, this team settled for three-point shooting when Rick Barnes said after the game he tried to drill it into their heads that wouldn't win against Kentucky because he knew they would lag back. Tennessee didn't try to get it inside. Tennessee settled for three-point shots. They took 45, which is the second most in program history. But I'll go back to the Auburn game as well. That could be viewed as a positive night in Tennessee's basketball resume come the end of the year when the NCAA tournament looks at it. It was a close loss against the #1 team in the nation. But I think there's a problem there that you have an effort problem. I think that Tennessee has an effort problem through its 3 main guys, Dubar, Lanier, and Milicic. And I think they had an overall effort problem against Auburn when it came to setting screens and fighting through screens. I've got real concerns about this program, and I ask you, is Rick Barnes losing his basketball team? David on the message board said that I need a Jerry Green voice from Dave. Well, Jerry, what do you think? Well, could happen. I've seen it happen. All right, go ahead, Caleb. How concerned should Tennessee fans be about Rick Barnes losing this basketball team?
Well, first, I mean, I would push back on you in the idea that Darlington Dubar is one of their three main guys. I mean, he hasn't started a game this year, and I don't think he's played 20 minutes in a game this year. Yeah.
Well, he was supposed to be preseason. Sorry, I should have qualified that.
Right. And so he's dealing with a lot of issues. I can't go as far as Rick Barnes is losing his team. I can't even go the effort issue. Here's where I'm going, and this is really standing out with their primary scorers, Igor Milicic and Chaz Lanier. They have real trouble creating their own shot. And there is nobody on this team that can create their own shot. Now, given his play as a wing, Jemai Mashak should be able to, but Jemai Mashak is an offensive liability. And so it comes down to Chaz Lanier, who is looking more and more like just a spot-up shooter, or Igor Milicic, who's also looking more and more just like a spot-up shooter, even though he's a big. Igor Milicic understands nothing about leverage or positioning underneath the basket for a big man. I've never seen that before. And
whoa! You haven't? Have you seen any European players play?
They typically understand leverage and positioning. They do.
I would disagree with that. I think what you're doing is pulling out the best ones that we've seen over time. But as a whole, I think this is a common problem with European players.
Well, I haven't seen him be as bad as Igor Milicic. I mean, if you go to if you take the most classic European finesse big man, which would be Dirk Nowitzki, he understood positioning and how to get leverage underneath the basket. And he could get 8 rebounds a game.
No, I think that's where you're kind of fortifying my point. For every Dirk, for every Nikolai Jokic, there are 10 guys that didn't make it in the NBA because they didn't do what you did, which is which is understanding leverage. So I'm not surprised by that. I'm surprised that Dubar's absence wasn't something that Tennessee could remedy more easily. I'm surprised that they haven't adjusted. And I think that's more about players than Rick Barnes. And the question is, are these players giving up on the only way that Tennessee can win, which is a defensive style, which is dumping it down low, even if you know it's coming back out and you're going to have to shoot it? That's the style you have to rely on. It's not fun. Someone on the message board, let me give a shout out, that said it's all about shooting threes nowadays. Well, yeah, if you've got the guys, I mean, that's what Golden State does and has done for better part of a decade or more. But you've got to have the guys. And I think that Rick Barnes sent a clear message to his basketball team in the Auburn game when they throttled it down and played defense and tried to win with a slow game, that this is the way we're going to play. And I don't think his players responded to that against Kentucky. That, to me, is problematic and troublesome.
Okay, but here's the issue. To play inside out like you're talking about, there's one key problem with that. Someone's got to be able to score inside. And who on this team? I mean, you bring it up. Darlington Dubar hasn't gotten to where he is, and I guess that's why you put more blame on him than a lot of people, because I think he meant for this offense to go through Darlington Dubar to a certain degree. But Igor Milicic just can't score inside. I mean, at the end of the day, Dave, Igor Milicic is nothing more than a 6'10" wing. He's not a power forward by any stretch. He can't play inside. I mean, it's becoming clear as day that he can't. Felix Opera on the other side is the tough guy inside, but that's all he is a tough guy. You're a Celtics fan. Felix Opera is nothing more than Kendrick Perkins was for the Celtics back in the day. You know, the clean up the glass, scrapper, get the rebounds, but you can't have him scoring inside. He's not useful at that. Cade Phillips is still developing. JP Estrella getting hurt, I think, changes this a lot. I'll tell you, yesterday's game, if JP Estrella was healthy, Dave, he'd have made a huge difference because they could go down low to him and play this game.
I'm not going to argue for a second, Caleb, that Tennessee would love to have a post score. Okay, I'm not going there. But at this point in the season, you know you don't have it, but you still have to be disciplined enough to dump it down low and keep defenses honest. And they didn't do that against Kentucky. Even if you know that it's just an exercise in futility when it comes to the scoreboard, you have to dump it down low and keep teams honest. And they didn't do any of that, which again makes me think that Rick Barnes is on the verge of losing his team. And with Florida coming down the pike, it could get worse before it gets better.
So you're saying doing it like a team that can't run, like how the Patriots back in the day couldn't run the ball, but they still did it just to keep defenses honest. They still committed to the run game.
Exactly. I mean, get a guard who's now maybe the Kentucky game is not a great example because you had some open threes that were missed.
That's where I was going to go.
Right. But Rick Barnes said it after the game. You have to continue to keep teams honest, just like Tennessee had to keep teams honest offensively in football by going to that 2 tight end and running the ball. I don't think it's going to lead to – I don't think we're going to say at the end of March that, wow, Tennessee's post presence led them to a Final Four berth. But I think we're very likely to say with Tennessee's lack of adjustment midseason, they got bounced in one of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. Because I wrote about this on offthehooksports.com. They're quickly becoming a team that could slip into that 4, 5, or 6 seeded range. And I have no faith the way they played on the road that they're going to go win a game against a 8, 9, 10, 11 type of team. This team needs, as much as anybody else, a 1 to 16 or a 2 to 15 or a 3 to 14. And I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think they're going to get that warm-up game where they're double-digit favorites. And even if they do, a la Kentucky, that were double-digit underdogs, I'm not sure they'll win the game.
Yeah, I mean, and you were right. Like we're underselling how bad of a loss that was last night. Dave, did I not tell you yesterday I thought Tennessee was going to win by 25?
Yeah, and I thought they would win by double
Kentucky
digits. I thought it was a bounce-back game at home.
Kentucky had 2 of their starters hurt. I mean, this was a bad look to lose this game. I mean, we're kind of underselling how big of a deal it was that Tennessee lost this game, honestly. And so I kind of want to drive that point home to a certain degree. I'm with you. I think that Kentucky and Tennessee, that game last night revealed a lot of concerns. But Dave, I can't sit there and say the strategy was wrong because, like you just said, they had the open looks yesterday. They're just not hitting them. And I got to be honest, I think we're underselling the point. I think the reason Rick Barnes doesn't think his team can win by shooting threes regularly is because he didn't think Chaz Lanier is mentally tough. I'm sorry, Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic are mentally weak. And I'm just going to – I mean, we said it yesterday, and they are very, very weak mentally as players.
On our message board, Steve's saying Dalton was a clutch shooter. This team is missing that. True. But Matt, I think, brings up a little bit more of a pressing point. How is the Chaz can't dribble, juke, and shoot? He can't find his own space. He absolutely cannot. And it's time to get used to that. It's time for this Tennessee basketball team and its players to say, that's where we are. We have to play more efficient basketball. And if they don't, I don't see this team making it to even the Sweet 16. I don't want to speak in hyperbole the day after a loss, Caleb, but this one is very disconcerting. Again, today's tough question is on the YouTube page, and it's pretty simple. And I'll give you the answers. Are you worried about Rick Barnes losing his team? Yes, slipping away. No, he's too good of a coach. Pretty close voting. Tell you first about Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott. All right, we take a look at our poll question that is on the YouTube page. Are you worried about Rick Barnes losing his team? Yes, slipping away, 39% of the vote. No, he's too good of a coach, 61% of the vote. Where do you stand, Caleb?
I say yes, slipping away. But not for the reason you do. I don't think the strategy is as bad as even Rick Barnes thinks it was. I think they just – look, they should be good enough to Golden State you out of the building, Dave. This team should. Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic should be good enough to Golden State you out of the building. Okay.
No.
And they're not. I said Chaz Lanier was a better 3-point shooter than Chris Lofton in January. At the
Well,
beginning
you're
of January.
wrong.
But he was shattering Chris Lofton's record. And he
Yeah.
was looking great. And then all of a sudden, the palms got sweaty. The moments got a little bigger. And Chaz Lanier got a little scareder.
Well, that's what
And-
differentiates Chris Lofton from the rest of the pack.
But how could I have known that at the start of January? I mean, we were debating Chaz Lanier and Dalton Connect at the time. I was making that debate thinking Chaz Lanier's 3-point shooting would continue. I didn't know he would go like this.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, I think you were a little ahead of yourself, maybe on your skis a little bit. I mean, that to me is the ultimate determining factor if you're an elite player or not. And right
But how
now,
are we supposed to know that at the time?
Chaz Lanier is not an elite player, and you're not an elite prognosticator.
Oh, really? Okay. I can't
Well,
judge
you couldn't have-
intangibles
you
like
couldn't-
that.
You couldn't have known that, but in retrospect, you have to say that, hey, this thing didn't shake out the way we thought it would.
I have no problem saying that in retrospect. You're right.
Now, before the season, if you would have told me that Chaz Lanier's not clutch, I would have said, okay, I don't know the intangibles. The thing that's still most stunning to me about his game is he can't put it on the floor, given his ability to shoot. He can't put it on the floor and get to the rack. That is just non-existent, Caleb.
No, you're right. That's what's shocking about it. I mean, he has Chris Lofton's weaknesses and not as good of strengths as Chris Lofton did, funny enough, with that in mind. I mean, that's really, I mean, again, guys, the red flag was there on Saturday at Auburn. Everybody was excited about almost beating Auburn when I'm like, guys, Auburn's best player was at 50%. But two, the red flag was you bring up the Dubar play at halftime. I bring up the play for Zakai Ziegler at the end of the game. Rick Barnes didn't even trust his best shooter to hit the game-winning shot at Auburn. I had no problem with going for the 3 at Auburn. I don't think you did either, Dave, right? When you're on the road against the number 1 team in the country, you want to go ahead and win that game.
I think the chances, if you go to overtime, are about 20% of winning that game. So, yeah, a lot of basketball aficionados hated that call that I've talked to, including former coaches in college. But I kind of look at it from a big picture. I'm with you on that. Chuck the 3 and get out of the building, because it's a good loss if you miss the 3. It could be a bad loss by 10 if you get into overtime with essentially playing 7 players. That would have been very troublesome to me. It's time for this day in Tennessee sports history, and it's brought to you by our friends at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, where I'm in the midst of purchasing a Ford Bronco and super excited about it because the selection is unmatched, and they absolutely want you to drive off in the absolute best vehicle that fits your needs. Proud supporters of the community, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, the largest Ford and Lincoln dealer in terms of volume in East Tennessee. So definitely check them out on Parkside Drive or on Kingston Pike. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, as we go to it now, Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, this day in Tennessee sports history, what do we got, Caleb?
On this day in 2018, Tennessee cracked the top 20 of the AP poll in basketball for the first time in the post-Bruce Pearl era during the regular season.
I don't want to overstate that, but how important was that to say that this is a basketball program that is based off tradition, great facilities, and can be successful without one of the best coaches in the nation, which you and I both think that Bruce Pearl is?
I don't want to overstate it because I want to give Dave Hart credit for making the hire of Rick Barnes at the time. That was you talk about Dave Hart. No. He hired Rick Barnes. He screwed up with Donnie Tyndall, and I will never forget, he made a mistake with the Donnie Tyndall hire. He called a press conference the day he fired Donnie Tyndall, and he answered every single question that was asked of him. I don't think he did everything right. He hired Butch Jones, but I think Dave Hart gets a little bit of too much flack for what he was there to do. You talk about it. He was there to be the hatchet man. And I mean, they made him be the bad guy to force out Pat Summitt. Let's call it what it is. They wanted Pat Summitt forced out. They didn't want her coaching because of the Alzheimer's issue, but nobody wanted to actually force her out because they didn't want to look bad. So they hired Dave Hart to do that, pretty much.
You're right, by the way. I misspoke. You're right. Hart did hire Rick Barnes. Now, in all fairness, the way I had it misconstrued in my head, you had one of the best all-time coaches fall in your lap that wanted to be closer to North Carolina. I mean, I almost give Dave Hart more credit for keeping Rick Barnes from going to UCLA than the actual hire. So I misspoke there, but my intention.
But at the same time, like, typically an athletic director, even if Rick Barnes is an all-time coach, he's 60. An athletic director is so arrogant. Typically, they want they want to hire the 40-year-old guy who they think will be with their school for 25 years. And Dave Hart did a very good job of saying, you know what, I'll take the proven commodity who may only be at Tennessee, may only be with us for 10 years. We can bring stability to the program, so we're going to take it. Remember, Tennessee, between Pearl and Barnes, had one NCAA tournament appearance. Now, they made the Sweet 16, and during that NCAA tournament appearance, it was 2014 under Conzo Martin. But at the same time, they were never in the top 25 of the regular season that year. They reached the top 20 in December of 2011. Then the Bruce Pearl suspension hit. The news of all the recruiting violations hit. The questions of his job hit, and that team that could have won a national championship collapsed throughout the middle of the season. Conzo comes in. Conzo did inherit a mess, does a decent job, not a great job, definitely could have done a better job. And then he leaves, and then Donnie Tyndall comes, and then Donnie Tyndall looked like he was building up a program, but then we find out, had academic fraud issues out the wazoo, so he's fired. And then you lead to Rick Barnes. Now, the crazy part is, Rick Barnes took 3 years to rebuild the program. And so this was Rick Barnes' third year where they reached the top 20. And Will West will tell you, and I remember Rick Barnes was telling everybody that all season, Dave, after 500 years for Tennessee basketball, Rick Barnes was telling everybody who will listen, guys, we're much better than we're getting credit for right now. This team's going to be really, really, really good. And they turned out to be really, really, really good. And then they cracked the top 20 in 2018. And they really haven't looked back since with Rick Barnes. They have been a perennial contender since that time. And you got to give Rick Barnes credit for getting him to that level. But Jay, you got to give Dave Hart credit for making the hire. I give Dave Hart credit. I defend him for the Donnie Tyndall thing. Look, let's be honest. For those who know basketball, if Donnie Tyndall wasn't such a cheater, he'd have won a national championship in college.
Oh, come on.
Donnie Tyndall was a great recruiter. You want to know what he did, Dave? He ran the high-low motion offense that Bill Self runs at Kansas.
Yeah,
and he also ran the 1-3-1 defense that Rick Pitino runs at Louisville, and he pressed on every made basket. It was the most fun team to watch.
Two things. That's an incredible statement to say he would have won a national championship, and probably not true. But that's also like saying if, I were 6'5", had a bazooka and could run a 4.2, I'd be an NFL star. Saying that he's not going to cheat is that's just but that's not going to happen.
Let me ask you this. Well, okay, but Lane Kiffin at Tennessee. Would Lane Kiffin have won a national title? I think he would have.
Wait. You can't compare the two. Tyndall cheated so bad he got a 10-year show cause. Come on. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. So excited that I will have an opportunity to own a Bronco. Shopping today. As a matter of fact, in 2 minutes, Tony Jones will join us, our basketball analyst, former associate head coach at Tennessee and at the University of Auburn. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports.
Hey, Ted, it's time to save some cash during New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
I Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, welcome back to the program. Properly caffeinated. We will visit with Tony Jones here in just a moment. As Caleb Calhoun is still out in the land of the desert, you can see that apparently there's a Memphis fan living out in the desert as he's out somewhere in Phoenix. As you got Paul Gasol and Zach Randolph. So
wait. Don't disrespect Don't disrespect Mark Gasol. It's Mark Gasol and Zach Randolph.
Whatever. Did you get those 2 jerseys with like a combo meal at McDonald's? Did they just come along with it?
Mark Gasol was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2013, and Zach Randolph is a 4-time All-Star. And also, first of all, I'm with my in-laws who are from Memphis, just like I am. So they were hardcore Grizzly fans. They had season tickets for years and years and years. I'm a hardcore Grizzly fan. So, yeah, he got those 2 signed by Mark and Zach. That was, Dave, you don't appreciate the fact that the Grizzlies were kind of like the bad boy Pistons of the 2010s as the NBA was getting soft and everybody was shooting threes. We had Zach Randolph saying, I may be able to shoot threes, but I bet you won't be able to fight us. You may beat us, but you can't fight us.
Couple of questions from the message board, and one is brought to you by member Steve. Member Steve says, will UT ever stop losing to inferior teams in any sport? It would be a great vaccine for VDS if they could. Well, I'm not so sure that Kentucky is an inferior team anymore, Caleb. I mean, based off what I've seen from Tennessee in the past week, yes, we went into that game, but would it stun you if when they play again, if Kentucky's actually the favorite? It wouldn't me.
No, it wouldn't me either. And I mean, the thing that stood out, and I told you this, Dave, didn't I? I said Kentucky their talent is a little bit subpar this year, and they are still learning the new system. But you got to give me this after watching Mark Pope. He's a good in-game tactician, isn't he? The way he coached that game, he is much. Is he not much better than John Calipari as an in-game coach?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, another question from the message board. And by the way, member Steve gets preference because he is a member. If you're a member of this YouTube channel, and a lot of you have signed up on the Patreon page because I've made it as confusing as possible. But you're still eligible if you sign up on the Patreon page for our weekly prizes, which will include the either a Celebrate 98 book or an Off the Hook Sports t-shirt, but also it will include our monthly grand prize. And we're getting ahead of the curve a little bit. We're going to give away our John Henderson helmet, but you have to be registered. So right now it's down to Steve, and we had one other. We've got about 9 others on the Patreon page. So we're bringing those into the fold. So don't worry, you're not getting left out. We appreciate the support, but we want to cycle all this back to the YouTube page. General Ursus says, who goes further into the postseason, Barnes or Caldwell? I'm going to make that the poll question, Caleb, but the fact that we're even having this discussion is troublesome.
Yeah, I mean, it is, given what I thought Barnes had built. We have to be fair to Rick Barnes in Tennessee basketball, though. Again, I want to insist this. This is not the team he thought he would have. He had a bad break in 3 ways. Cameron Carr transferring midseason because I believe Baylor tampered. JP Estrella suffering a season-ending injury. And Darlington Dubar for personal issues, taking a longer time to get acclimated into the system. And now we're in January, and it's hard to get acclimated in January when January ball rolls around. You got to give Rick Barnes those are 3 major things that he couldn't foresee in October when preseason was starting.
All right. BDS is now ball derangement syndrome.
Ball derangement syndrome.
Yes, battered ball syndrome has got.
Which one's more dangerous? Is any one of those permanent? Is any one of those fatal?
Probably BDS sounds more fatal than BVS. Doesn't BVS sound something like the doctor could give you a pill and you get over it, like a strong Pepsid?
Yes, VDS sounds like something you get at a Knoxville strip club from a Vol fan there. And
yes, which doesn't go away no matter how many antibiotics you used. So are you worried about Rick Barnes losing his team? No, he's too good of a coach. 62% yes, slipping away. We replace that with what goes further into the postseason. Who goes further into the postseason? Rick Barnes, Kim Caldwell. Caldwell's at 70%. Rick Barnes is at 30%. Caleb, if I told you that before the season, you would have laughed out loud.
Yeah, I would have. I thought the goal for Kim Caldwell was just to get to the NCAA tournament. John Adams, again, I can't wait to have him on because I keep calling him out on what he thought about the Lady Vols this year. But he'll acknowledge it. He said that he thought this was an NIT team, honestly, at the beginning of the year. He didn't see how they could get to the tournament. And
the Lady Vols?
Yeah, Lady Vols. And it's half and half. Part of it is I just told you guys all the issues Rick Barnes dealt with, but part of it is Kim Caldwell's done an amazing job with Tennessee. Here's another question. Whose looks are more impressive? Kim Caldwell, just period, Kim Caldwell, or Rick Barnes for a 70-year-old man?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. Will the Lady Vols go further than the Vols in the NCAA tournament? I can't determine the difference between guys. Like I've told you before, I can nail a 1, like which would be, I don't know, the
George from Seinfeld.
Yeah, the Hunchback. No, he's done a 1. He's just somewhere in between. I could see him being a good-looking guy to the right woman. And I can see a 10, which is Brad Pitt. I can't determine 2 through 9. So I don't know if Caleb's a 2 through 9. I don't know where he lands.
Oh, please, I'm a 10. We all know that. You know, though, that like for a 70, okay, just in terms of like comparing Rick Barnes to other 70-year-old men, you could say that he looks better than most men his age. He looks like he's 40. Not 40, but does he not look? How old would you think Rick Barnes is if you just saw him in the street?
I don't know, Caleb.
I'd say 52.
Okay. Well, I got that when I was. David says Kim because she's hot. No, don't.
Who's in? Well, that's who's in the higher percentile of like their demographic. Kim Caldwell for 34-year-old women, or 35-year-old women, or Rick Barnes for 70-year-old men.
Yes.
Who's in the higher percentile of looks in there?
Nathaniel pointed out that I said, quote, I can nail a 1. Well, yeah, that's about where I am. I get a compliment from Taylor as I was buying a suit recently. She
Taylor
said,
Swift?
No, a tailor, an actual person that has talent, unlike Taylor Swift. Yeah, she's horrible. So this person said, yeah, you wouldn't want to, she was a younger person. And I said, you wouldn't want to go out with me. I'm 50. And she goes, you're 50? And I said, yeah. I said, why do you ask? He said, well, my boyfriend just turned 50. And I said, well, so you don't mind dating older men? She said, well, but you look a lot younger than my boyfriend.
Oh, okay. She was Wild Dave. She was trying to trying to
get a number. Nah,
she wanted See, you don't want to get roped into that. You don't know if her 50-year-old boyfriend can fight or is dangerous or, but she's trying to rope you into a situation.
I didn't want anything to do with that. Portions of the program brought to you by our friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Want to be sure and thank our friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. Just go to Facebook and follow at Sports Treasures TN. Sports Treasures TN. So coming up on the program, we will visit with Tony Jones, associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee, formerly under Bruce Pearl, and associate head basketball coach at the University of Auburn. So we'll go ahead and see if we can get him in. Other factors that stood out from Tennessee's loss against Kentucky, and we'll go ahead and say bank on it. How about this? Bank on it. Kim Caldwell will go further in the NCAA tournament than Rick Barnes. You're going to bank on it, yes or no? Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Caleb, what say you, sir?
I'm going to say yes. I want to say yes, given this team now. I think Kim Caldwell, one, got the team together she wanted, and it's gone pretty much to plan for her for this year, whereas with Rick Barnes, it has not gone to plan, and it hasn't gone to plan for 4 reasons. It hasn't gone to plan because Darlington Dubar took too long to develop in the system because of his personal issues. Hasn't gone to plan because JP Estrella suffered a season-ending injury. Hasn't gone to plan because Cameron Carr transferred mid-season, just out of the blue. And it hasn't gone to plan because Chaz Lanier has turned out to be somebody who's really, really, really scared of the moment. And I'm like, I don't know if he sees this, but this is a challenge to you, Chaz. You, I think, are a choke artist. And I think you're scared of the big moments, and I think you melt down. And if you take that personally, good for you. You should, because then because players who take it personally can turn it around. And Dave, you know this. If someone turns it around, I'll 180 how I feel about them, won't I? In that moment. And
I don't think it's that. I think he's put too much pressure on himself. And I think too much pressure has been put on him because of other guys that haven't lived up to their billing. So that's probably splitting hairs a little bit. It's a little bit of both. But bank on it. I think Kim Caldwell's team goes deeper in the NCAA tournament than the men.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank. Tony Jones joins us now. We'll ask you this question. Associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee, associate head basketball coach at Auburn. He knows more basketball. He's forgotten more basketball than I've ever known. Tony, who goes deeper in the NCAA tournament? Is it Kim Caldwell and the Lady Vols, or is it Rick Barnes and the men?
I think it's Rick Barnes and the men. They play defense. They do some things well on the offensive end when they're in transition, and if they're making threes. Kim Caldwell's team, they shoot a lot of questionable threes, and even though I was a part of our organized chaos at Tennessee, with the pressure defense and things of that nature. And we had depth and we was committed to the depth, but we wouldn't substitute 5 people at a time. I just don't think that creates continuity.
What player, and I don't want to say disappointed because the guys are rolling in here and I know they're doing their best, but let's replace it with this. What player has played at a surprisingly low level compared to what you thought at the beginning of the season? And I'm talking I'm not talking about the JP Estrellas of the world or the Cars that are not a part of the team. We thought they would be key factors, but I'm talking about the guys that are actually on the team.
Well, it's just been a level of inconsistency. I'm not going to say I've been overly disappointed in any individual. I mean, some nights it's one individual's night, and the other individuals are not being as productive. Last night, obviously, I was right there, courtside, and I saw. I saw a Kentucky team that baited Tennessee in the shooting threes. Obviously, in my estimation, going into the game, having doing some research, Kentucky was not a good defensive team. Not a good defensive team. And they held Tennessee to 34% from the field and 24% from three. 11 of 45 at home from three-point land is not going to get it done. I don't care if you're playing Jerry's kids.
Or wait, are we talking about Jerry Green's kids? No, I'm
you know I'm talking about Jerry Lewis.
I know. So Tony, you say that, and I'm with you. I know a lot of people felt like they jacked up a lot of threes, but they had a lot of open looks yesterday. So is it more concerning that they took so many threes, or is it more concerning that they didn't hit more of those threes given how many open looks they had?
Well, it just seemed like they were focusing on shooting the three. And no matter what we say, as a basketball coach, we know a three-point shot is not as high a percentage shot as a two-point shot. That's just the way it is. And they did a good job of getting second opportunities, and then they were scurrying out to the three-point line and still shooting them. And the game didn't necessitate them shooting threes. It necessitated them to get to the basket and getting fouled and stopping the clock and cutting into that deficit. Kentucky controlled the game. They controlled that basketball game. And for you to get back in the basketball games, obviously, Caleb, you got to make an open three, but you got to get to the basket, put the onus on the officials. You're at home. It's an unbelievable crowd there, and get that clock stopped and try and get back in the game. I mean, once Milicic hits that shot off the glass to cut it to one, everybody in the arena thought, hey, it was going to happen. But at the end of the day, Sonny Hill, longtime NBA guy, used to say this: when you get down so much, trying to get back into the game takes a lot of energy. And I think that's what ended up happening last night.
Tony, remind everybody before Caleb, I know you want to jump in here, of your Twitter handle so people can follow you.
Yeah, follow me on T Jones Live. And then you can also follow me on Facebook at T Jones Live also, and Instagram, T Jones Live.
Beautiful. All right, Caleb.
So Tony, thinking about this, just from Kentucky's perspective for a minute, I'll be honest, I laughed about the Mark Pope hire when they made the move. I thought they shot really low. Was I wrong? I know Kentucky's got some talent issues, but they looked very well coached yesterday in that game.
Mark Pope's a good coach. I know him. I know him personally. He did an outstanding job at BYU. He's a Kentucky guy. I mean, he won a national championship there. So I think Kentucky made the right hire. I think Kentucky, they wanted to get away from that one and done mechanism of John Calipari and bring in some guys that's going to be there for a while. Get some portal guys that's experienced. I mean, Berea, the kid from Dayton, he was unbelievable. I mean, 18 points, 5 of 5 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3. We played well. Robinson was stellar. And then the guy was Williams. Williams with 10 points, but 15 big rebounds. Every rebound, defensive rebound, it seemed that came off that rim, he was there. And then he handled the ball a lot. He broke the pressure because obviously, as you well know, Kentucky came into the game shorthanded.
They did, and I thought they were simplistic on defense. And Tennessee, they lagged back. Tennessee got a lot of open three-point looks. So how do you handle that as a coach, Tony? Because you're getting the open three-point looks, and your nature as a shooter says, I got to stroke it right here. I got to shoot it right here. But Rick Barnes is telling you, according to his post-game comments, that you have to at least dump it down low, even if they kick it back out, because you got to keep people honest. As a coach, man, how do you handle that? Because you're a guy who coaches on flow and X's and O's, which I always like talking to you.
Well, you know, I agree with Rick. I mean, they have to establish some type of low post presence. And then you got to understand that sometimes you're open for a reason. Sometimes I want you to shoot the shot. And if you're baited into doing it and you shooting it at a low percentage, then, you know, hey, I've won half the battle. I mean, in my estimation, I love ZZ, but he shouldn't be shooting 18 field goals. He shouldn't be shooting the ball more than anybody else on the team. He's a distributor. I've had conversations with him about it, and he's always said, I need to get my teammates involved before I look at my offense. But 18 field goals, 1-11 from 3, that's not a recipe to win.
Tony, on that note, is this on Ziegler, or is there an issue of, I'm calling it a couple of major scorers not willing to meet the moment? Because to me, it was a red flag that Rick Barnes called the game-winning 3 for Ziegler on Saturday and not Chazanier and Milicic. And I don't blame Barnes, but doesn't that suggest that Rick Barnes doesn't think Milicic and Lanier are mentally cut out for crunch time?
Hey, you know what? Rick Barnes is a very accomplished coach. I mean, his record speaks for itself. He's there each and every day at those practices. You know, he's been obviously seeing these guys, especially Ziegler, play for 4 years, and Milicic and Lanier only 1 year. It was quite startling to me. A couple of important possessions where Lanier was just in the corner, just standing there, stagnant, no movement at all. You know, and I don't know if that was by design or he didn't want to meet the moment, and you know, he didn't want to challenge himself. We used to always say, great players either want to be the hero or the GOAT. I mean, you want to take that shot. Maybe, you know, maybe Rick may have a mindset that Lanier and Milicic, they don't want to be the GOAT.
Tony's appearance brought to you in part by our friends at Work Trucks. I'll tell you more about that here in just a moment. But Tony, let me ask you this. How confident are you that Tennessee bounces back against a good Florida team? Because I was super confident they'd bounce back against Kentucky, and I was dead wrong.
It's gonna be a tough matchup on Saturday at noon. You know, when a team, Hook, beats you really bad, you know, that stays in your consciousness as a player, thinking that this team may be better than me. It may be better than us. So if Florida gets off to a good start, I like to see Tennessee. I like to see what Tennessee's mindset or resolve is, as far as trying to get back in the game. If they let Florida control the game like Kentucky controlled the game, it's going to be very challenging to win that game. Obviously, we playing at home. We know it's a must game. We got to win this game. We've lost 2 in a row. So I think the coaching staff is going to get their players prepared. I think they're going to come out with a sense of urgency, and I like Tennessee's chances. But if they don't come out starting out of the gate well, then it could be challenging.
Great stuff as always, Tony. We'll talk to you soon, and I'll be in touch. Do you have something else, Caleb? Go ahead.
Tony, can you correct Dave for a minute real quick? Because I am at my in-law. I'm a hardcore Grizzly fan. I'm at my in-laws' house. They were Grizzly fans. They have a signed Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol jersey behind me. Dave questioned the value of Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol signed jerseys and how good they were.
All right. Great stuff, Tony. We greatly appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon. Have a blessed day. Tony's appearance brought to you in part by Work Trucks. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sometimes you forget who has the control of the mic. Tony Jones there. As Tony's appearance, hold on there. Just bring up our friends from Work Trucks. Work Trucks all about trucks. Maybe Caleb will get to speak here in about 60 seconds. Trucks are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. We'll give Caleb the final word. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an Apide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. They're on Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. Tell them that Off the Hook Sports sent you. The entire inventory is online at worktrucksllc.com. Worktrucksllc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. So let's go ahead and give Caleb the final word here. We'll bring his mic back up. I didn't mean to do that to you, Caleb. As now I can't find out how to bring it back up. Okay, there you are. Caleb, what were you going to say about the Gasols or Zach Randolph or the Memphis Grizzlies?
I didn't want to say. I wanted Tony Jones to correct you. I wanted you to be taken to.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep, boop, beep, bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
What the H?
Wow, I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. ThanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I realized I need a haircut. That long floppy thing makes it look like my hairline is receding more than it is. I gotta work on that.
Sorry for being on the phone right there, Dave. It was Jerry Jones. He's offering me the offensive coordinator job for the Dallas Cowboys now because you know
he probably do a better job than whoever they'll hire. Another Schottenheimer in charge. Welcome back to the program.
Why are you throwing a shot at the hire?
Yeah, that's very good. All right, so Caleb brought up a point as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb brought up this point that just naturally fell into what the H? And I want to get to that right now because it's one of those things that he said initially that kind of was like, I don't know, that's odd. Let's get to it now. What the H? There we go. That's not right. I tell you what. Yeah, let's do it like this. Let's just start all over. What the H?
What the H?
That music.
Wow. I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. ThanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Caleb brought this up at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. Will it be a disappointment if Tennessee's football program doesn't get a bye or a home field playoff game in Neyland Stadium? We'll make it the poll question, and it'll be brought to you by our fantastic friends. They're at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. But Caleb, I ask you this. Will Tennessee ultimately, will their season be a disappointment if they don't at least host a playoff game, which essentially is finishing in the top 8 of the college football playoff selection show committee, whatever they are? All right, Caleb, when you said it initially, I was like, no, surely not. Make an argument that this would be a disappointing season if Tennessee is in the same position they are last year and having to hit the road in the playoffs.
If Tennessee doesn't get a bye or a home playoff game, I don't really care about the bye, but a home playoff game, it's because of what it means for the regular season. It means that they struggled into November to lock up a playoff spot. You don't want to be in the situation Tennessee was in this past year, where in the next to last week of the regular season, you were watching as a Tennessee fan about 4 other games, hoping one of them broke your way so Tennessee could get in. Now, it turned out a lot of them broke your way. So you ended up like what would have been the last seed in the playoff. You ended up getting in the 9th seed in the playoff because a bunch of things happened. But Tennessee football, I think if they don't get a bye, it means the regular season they didn't do what they needed to do. More importantly than that, or I'm sorry, if they don't get a home playoff game or a bye. But more importantly than that, after what we just watched with the college football playoff last year, Dave, I think if they don't get a home playoff game or a bye, they're going home in the first round. I think we are underselling how Tennessee won. There was a Tennessee takeover of Columbus, okay, and they still lost. I think home field advantage is such a big deal in the college football playoff. I mean, you know this, Dave. Home field has a much bigger impact in college football than it does in the NFL. Like, significantly so.
No, I agree. It's because you're dealing with kids, and by comparison, they're not seasoned pros who are used to going on the road 8-9 times in a season. But I will argue this. It's a little deeper. It's a disappointment because Tennessee didn't take a step in the right direction. And if they have to go on the road again, it could mean they're as low as 12, whereas their ranking before the playoff was what, Caleb, 9?
Well, their college football, they were in the 9th seed. They're
Right.
ranked 7.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So they're the 9th seed. That's all.
That's
that's all that matters. I mean, the AP poll didn't matter anymore. That's the final ranking. So they were 9th. So that's as good as you can get, right? If they'd have been 12th and they moved up to 9th this upcoming season, step in the right direction. Minute step in the right direction, but a step in the right direction. You were the highest seed that didn't have to go on the road. You were the highest seed that didn't get a road game and that didn't get a bye. So if they don't take a step in that direction, that to me is troublesome. Here's the other factor that you might not have thought about. Caleb, they have re-upped. They've redone the nuptials with this football roster. They have taken their NIL money and spent it on this. So that, to me, is an even bigger question. Did Josh Heupel misevaluate the talent on his roster not once in recruiting or in the transfer portal, but twice to keep these dudes around? That, to me, would be incredibly troublesome, too, if I'm a Tennessee fan.
Oh, that would be incredibly troublesome. It'd be a major issue. And also, let's be clear on this. They wouldn't just be these 2 years. Then you have to go all the way back to 2021 when Josh Heupel misevaluated Joe Milton and named him the starter. You have to look back at their best season being 2022. And then you start to have to ask, was Josh Heupel's success built on Jeremy Pruitt recruits? Now, I want to be fair. Caveat, got to throw this out there. Take a deep breath. Tennessee had a first-year starter at quarterback. And more importantly, and this is a big deal, they were the highest seeded road team this year and happened to play the best team in the college football playoff, the one who ended up winning a national championship that you could tell was on a mission to humiliate everybody and anything in their path. And so if those two things don't happen, I mean, Tennessee is a Lance Hurd sprained ankle from hosting a playoff game because they would have beaten Arkansas then. And so, I mean, we're really being unfair maybe with how last year went with the misevaluating talent. But I still maintain that you're right. They need to take a step forward this year. We're kind of building off what we talked about yesterday with Paul Feinbaum, saying experts think Tennessee's in a transition year. If they're in a transition year, that's a problem with Heupel. One, Vegas doesn't think they are. Vegas does not think Tennessee's in a transition year. Tennessee needs to get a home playoff game this year. And they definitely may need to get it, Dave, because there's a strong possibility that they don't do the seeding format they did this past year, that they go just straight 1 through 12. And if they do that, Tennessee would have gotten a home playoff game this past year. So they absolutely need to
talking about after this year. Wait. Go back. They're not going to change the seeding this year.
They're talking about changing the seeding format where they're
not going to do it this year. I can. Trust me, I've talked to some sources. That contract is more ironclad than I thought because that came up with Jimmy last week. So I did some digging. That's not going to change this year as much as I think it should. And the NCAA has been inconsistent, or whoever's in charge. I don't think it's going to change this year. I think everything's locked in the way it's going to be. Is based off what I've been told. That would be a major shock. Now, going into 2026, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I know. Well, the contract I always knew was 2 years. And by the way, they always wanted it right at 2 years because they wanted the format to be a little messy so the SEC and the Big Ten could then come back and say, we demand more teams in this playoff or else we're walking away. We're going to take our ball and go home. And so I think that's a big deal. Look, Tennessee needs to – either way, Tennessee needs a home playoff game. They were one spot out this year, and if not for an Arkansas loss, they would have gotten it. They need to host a playoff game this year. Particularly when their schedule strength is going to look better this year, because I think Florida's going to be really good. I think Alabama's going to be better, and Georgia's going to be Georgia.
All right.
So Tennessee will look a lot better.
Fair enough. All right. So Tennessee also is recruiting a little bit. They had their second junior day over the weekend. So we're going to talk a little bit of football. We'll get back to basketball here momentarily, and I see that on the message board. I get that sentiment. We'll do that. It's Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. That's cityheatandair.com. As we move in, take that down, please. Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. So let's discuss the visitors that came away impressed after their trip to Knoxville. Cato is seemingly falling for the Vols. He visited Tennessee twice in the past month. a massive shift for the 6'4", 365-pound offensive lineman from Trinity High School in Euless, Texas. 2026 prospect has said that his top schools are Texas A&M, Southern Methodist, and Oklahoma, along with Tennessee. Katoa rated as a 3-star prospect, but I have the feeling that he could end up ranking much higher than that, given his size. A lot of these scouts want to see him probably drop 20 or 30 pounds at 365 pounds, but this is the type of guy that could certainly help Tennessee, who prides itself on interior offensive lineman. And I believe, not to stereotype, but I believe he's Polynesian. And Tennessee historically has gotten great play out of those guys.
Yeah, but you got to caveat it. They've historically gotten great play out of people of Polynesian descent. They've historically gotten bust out of Texas. So they've never really had good luck with Texas. I think the players, the schools recruiting him make it look like he's more of a 4-star type of guy. That 365 pounds is massive. I do see him being recruited and targeted the way Javonte Spraggins was 6 years ago. And he looks like a guy that could fill that void. But again, you got to be very, very, very careful with those Texas kids that leave the state.
No, you're right. I think the only one that made news was the guy who they caught with pounds of pot and scales and baggies. I don't remember his name, but he was a defensive tackle that would have played. And I think he ended up playing for Baylor. Dre Quinn. Quinn is a 6'4", 228-pound edge rusher from Greater Atlanta Christian School in Norcross. 2026 class. He's getting much closer to Josh Heupel, according to On3, saying, quote, he is very relatable. He is the only coach that I can have an actual conversation with him, being comfortable and not being a robot. He's scheduled to join us on Off the Hook Sports, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, turn the notifications on so you know when Quinn's a part of the program. One of the highest rated edge rusher prospects in the nation, also a tight relationship with Rodney Garner, but ultimately, this would be a monster pickup for Tennessee if they're able to pluck one out from under Georgia's guys. But it's always the same when I see a kid coming out of Alabama. I'll believe it when I see it. Now, it is worth noting Quinn is from Ole Miss or from Mississippi, but I don't think that Ole Miss is a big factor. He's lived in Georgia most of his life. So Quinn would be monstrous. Again, Caleb, I believe it when I see it when it comes to prospects out of that area.
I mean, Tennessee's a better selling point if you're an edge rusher, given what Rodney Garner's done. A quick point of order, though. Clemson is recruiting him heavily, and I just want people to know that Chris Rump is the one from Clemson reportedly targeting him. For those who don't remember, Chris Rump was on Jeremy Pruitt's staff at Tennessee in 2018 and 2019. So I don't know how much that's worth, Dave, but he probably has a little bit of skill at negative recruiting for Tennessee. So that's kind of going to stand out. But if you're looking to be the best edge rusher possible and you think you can play, you go to Tennessee.
Yep. Tyson Robinson, 5'9", 185-pound running back. I don't know that you need to get overly excited about him. He is a guy that told On3 that he could be the next Dylan Sampson. Now, the only reason, honestly, at this size that I'm giving Tennessee some credit for recruiting him is that they've had success with smaller backs like Dylan Sampson. He was 5'11", just over 200 pounds. And Deshaun Bishop is listed at 5'10", 200 pounds. He's not 5'10" or 200 pounds. So I look at Tyson Robinson, and he is a guy that needs to grow, but I'm not ruling out that he could be a factor. He is out of Brandon High School in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, I love when people say they pick the greatest example possible of who they could be, and they say I can be the next this. Like a player goes to college, I can be the next LeBron. That's my game and who I model after. So the next Dylan Sampson, that's ambitious, but I give him credit. Tennessee system would favor that. He's 5'9", 185. He's being recruited heavily by Robert Gillespie, another former Tennessee assistant at Alabama. Interestingly enough, so we'll see how that plays out. But if Tennessee could land him, that would be another complimentary back for their future. I'm sure he's going to get rated soon. A lot of these ratings for 2026 haven't come out yet. And actually, he's in the 2027 class. So That's why he hasn't been rated yet.
Now, if you want to look for one down the pike, just like he is, Barack Willis is a guy that's much higher rated at this point, one of the top edge rushers in the 2027 class, a 4-star prospect from Moody, Alabama High School, recently reopened his recruitment after being committed to Alabama for almost 6 months. Tennessee has kept coming after the highly rated prospect from Alabama, despite the Alabama commitment. And Lavorne Harbin, if you haven't heard that name, a defensive analyst for Tennessee, has been the guy making a lot of the phone calls. So there's a name out of left field that Tennessee can certainly rely on. I want to go your thoughts on this young man. It's very early in his recruiting. So what are your thoughts on Barack?
I mean, he's the size you want in your edge rusher for Tennessee because they like their edge rushers a little bit smaller on one side. He's 6'3", 220, already a 4-star. I'm pretty sure this guy's going to be a 5-star by the time he signs with the school. And I know you have suspicions of players from Alabama not thinking they'll leave, but if you decommit from Alabama, you're clearly looking to go elsewhere. And he's out of St. Clair County, Birmingham area. For those who don't know, high school kids in Birmingham are very, very, very underrated. They are very well tested in that area. The competition is really, really, really good. I would say Mobile is probably the best football area in Alabama, but Birmingham's a very close second.
All right, we had a question from Steve-O. How does one sign up, Dave? All you have to do is sign up to our YouTube page. We're making that a lot more simple. So you just sign up for the YouTube page. Everybody that you can just be a member of the channel. Everybody that does will be eligible for our weekly prizes. So we appreciate your interest. If you're a member of the Patreon page, you're good till the end of next month, which would be March. And then we'll need you to transfer over. But we're blowing up the Patreon page basically because we want everything on Off the Hook Sports, including recruiting coverage, to be free to you. Now, this question or comment coming up from Dylan, who's one of our best commenters. We hope you join, Dylan. James Pierce getting drafted here soon will only help our case. That's an interesting perspective because we look at Pierce because we know the nuts and bolts of it. We've been under the hood and we've been messing around that there could be a misfire somewhere between Pierce and what we expected he would do and what he did do last year. But if you're a prospect, you just look at it. He's going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. And you look at Byron Young, who's had a good career. You look at other guys that I think will be drafted highly in the draft. And I think you look at Rodney Garner as a huge positive in the recruitment of this young man.
I totally agree. Also, though, I don't know how much kids do this, but if you plug in tape, there may have been a bit of a misfire, David, but if you just plug in tape and look at James Pierce rush the passer, you're going to look at that and say, that guy's elite. That guy's incredible. And no one's going to question that. So, yes, that is true. He's going to get drafted, but the question to these recruits is, are you sure you can do what he can do? Because that dude, I mean, again, look at the attention he was able to command at different times when he rushed the passer.
How in the world can I share a Twitter pic? I'm going to turn to basketball for a second. How can I share a Twitter pic as we're live here?
What? Just send it to me. I'll share it. Send it to me in the link. Okay. I'll share it.
All right, there we go. All right, so out of these prospects, let me ask you, Caleb, which of these do you feel that Tennessee is in best shape with? And I'm going to take out the running back because I feel like they could put the hard press on him and get him tomorrow. So out of the three that are most notable, which would be, I just love saying his name, so I'm going to say it again. It is Katoa, or is it Dre Quinn, or is it Barack Willis? Of the three, which do you think is Tennessee is in the best shape for?
I am pretty sure Dre Quinn is the one they're in the best shape for. They have the pipeline, they have the position. I think that's the selling point. Dre Quinn is a big selling point for them.
Or Travis says, or the exact opposite, and Pierce doesn't go in the first round, which I honestly don't think he will. That would not be a good look. And I do believe that there are going to be some issues, fairly or unfairly, with Pierce's season based off his mental focus or lack thereof because of a personal issue that I don't want to get into that was very serious and happened for the season. That's not fair, Caleb, but it's also not fair if your ACL gives out and the NFL says we're not drafting you as highly because of the ACL injury. It's just a factor. It goes into it. Maybe he goes in, he's very shy, but maybe he goes into it, blows everybody away with his interviews. But I can tell you that is going to be the number one factor for Pierce. He'll go in, I've been told, healthy compared to other guys. He'll go in and run a fantastic 40, and he'll vertical jump through the roof. But his interaction, his personal interaction, which is not the end-all be-all for a great football player, but that could undermine him and make him slip into the second round.
I normally would disagree with you, but I realize NFL scouts are way lazier than I thought they were, which is crazy because, I mean, you have the tough, like you're under pressure all the time to get it right. So you should do your due diligence and understand why he may have had a bit of a drop off. But I mean, I see them miss on draft picks all the time that I could have told them that they shouldn't have taken. So it's because of the laziness of NFL scouts. I think you might be right.
Well, and factor this in too. I mean, the shyness, if he has trouble interacting with people, that could be the difference. Unless he just puts up a 4.3 40 and a 42-inch vertical jump at 6'5" and 255 pounds. I mean, that changes everything. I'm trying to get you that tweet from Tony Jones. It's pretty classic. I'll send it to you here in just a second. So how key is Pierce and where he goes in getting in building up?
I don't think it matters, honestly, because Tennessee already has proven themselves with Byron Young, and Pierce is wherever he goes, he's going to make an impact in the NFL. And also this year, Tennessee's going to have an edge rusher who is better than James Pierce was. I keep telling you guys that Jordan Ross is going to make a bigger impact.
Well, I can't really argue with you now. All right. So Off the Hook Sports had a representative at the Tennessee basketball game. So I want to include this if I can, Caleb, and you might have to walk me through it because our representative actually took it a step further, and we appreciate that. He actually worked the refs, and that's what he did. And we love that. And I cannot find a way to pull it up. Caleb, how can you help me? Come on, help me.
You don't know how to copy and paste the link to a tweet?
I don't.
Wow. I know you're a Gen Xer, but man, you're really like a boomer.
Okay, on. All right, there we go. I think I got it shared. All right, I got to get this up. This is gold as Off the Hook Sports working the refs. We'll have that for you in just a moment. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I remind you that we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Nobody takes more pride in putting you in the right vehicle than Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. We love them, absolutely love them. And I'm looking forward to shopping for my new Bronco, continuing to do that. And it has been absolutely phenomenal working with those fine individuals. So Jimmy Himes to join us a little bit later, but I remind you that we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative, powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300 or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All right, Caleb, so you're gone. Where did Caleb go? We'll pull that picture up. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas at everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care.
And here we go.
It was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, thanksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Caleb's back. We thought he hit the portal for a moment. Caleb, are you able to pull up that picture of an Off the Hook Sports representative working the refs at the Tennessee Kentucky
How
game?
can I pull it up? You haven't. Did you retweet it? Is that why?
No, I emailed it to you.
Oh, you emailed it to me. Okay.
Yeah, Caleb, this is the deal. Also, we will have our stat of the day here. Do you want to do that first, or do you want to try to pull this up?
Oh, I can pull up the picture because I'm not a boomer.
Look at our guy Tony Jones working the refs during the game, and he's got that SEC shirt on. How awesome is that? So he looks like a representative from the conference. Like, you should listen to him. Strong. That's what we do.
He does.
It's what we do at Off the Hook Sports. We don't just tell you about the game. We try to influence it. No, we don't. Let's get to the stat of the day.
Stat of the day.
Yes. Stat of the day is brought to you by our fantastic friends at the Hemp House. The Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a great variety and a selection that absolutely can't be matched. Strict standards as well. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's HOOKED for 10% off. Stat of the day is now brought to you by the Hemp House.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Stat of the day, Caleb, what do you got?
Trey Smith is officially the 4th former Vol to play in at least 3 Super Bowls. Who were the other 3?
Okay. He's the 4th former Vol to play in the Super Bowl.
No, at least 3 Super Bowls.
At least 3 Super Bowls. Excuse me. All right. Let me see if I can answer this for you. Alvin Harper's. No, he left to the Bucks before the 95 one. Alvin Harper's not one. Peyton Manning's not one. Played in 2.
No, Peyton Manning is one. He played in 4. He won 2.
1, 2. Okay. So Peyton Manning. Reggie White played in 1, 2, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, he only played in 2.
Okay. This is more difficult than I thought it would be. How about some suggestions on the message board? So it's Peyton.
You were on the right track. If I can give you a hint, you were on the right track. You were on the right track thinking about the Cowboys.
Oh, wow. I don't know who I'm missing. I'm going through their entire roster and remember most of it, most of the starters at least. Was there a guy who wasn't quite a starter in the beginning of their 3 out of 4 run? You give it to me.
I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. He once got trucked by Herschel Walker.
Oh, Bill Bates. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Bill Bates.
Bill Bates.
Okay, Bill Bates is one.
And there's one more.
AFC or NFC? Who's got it in the message board? If you come up with it, maybe I'll hook you up with a shirt.
NFC.
NFC, we got a chat.
Got a really cool nickname.
NFC, really cool nickname. I want to turn to the Patriots because they played in so many, but I can't think. I'm stumped. You got me.
The Hacksaw.
Oh,
Jack Reynolds.
Reynolds. Oh man. Well, I didn't think you'd go back that far because most teams didn't go to multiple Super Bowls, right?
No, but Reynolds played for he got 2 with the 49ers and he played in 1 with the Rams.
Okay. Repeat that stat of the day as we remind you Hound Dogs of Knoxville provides our prizes. Champions look good in orange. So if you join our YouTube page, it's just like $5, I believe. Might go up to 10, so do it now. You'll get a gift certificate to Hound Dogs of Knoxville and also be eligible for our weekly prizes, which we'll give away each Friday. And that will be an Off the Hook Sports shirt, or we will hook you up with a Celebrate 98 book that is the rage. I will just tell you at all the Barnes and Nobles. Also, you'll be entered to win a monthly grand prize, which this month is an awesome mini autographed helmet that is right behind me, and that is signed by Big John Henderson. So we go from Big John Henderson to regular size Jimmy Hyams. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you?
I'm well. Jimmy definitely wins the hair battle as he's looking good, and Caleb and I are looking a little bit shady. So, Jimmy, I want to dive into a couple of football topics, but let me get your reaction to Tennessee basketball. I thought the Kentucky game would be a bounce back game, and I feel like I missed that big time.
Well, I thought it would be too. And Kentucky was without 2 of its best players. Lamont Butler has been injured. He was out. A guy named Carr has not practiced in over 3 weeks. He didn't play against Vanderbilt. He played maybe a minute against Tennessee. So they were basically without 2 key players, and yet Tennessee still couldn't win at home. And unfortunately, the more I watch this Tennessee team, the more flaws that I see. I mean, they were horrific shooting 3-pointers. They were 11 out of 45. They were 5 at 25 at one point in the game where they were trailing. And I don't understand why they are not better offensively. As far as I'm concerned, Nico Iamaleava is the only guy on offense that had a good game. Probably the only player that played well. I mean, Zakai Ziegler is 1 out of 11 on threes. And Rick Barnes even acknowledged they're not he said, we have good shooters, but not a good enough team to be jacking up 45 threes. He did say something that I thought was puzzling. He said 3-pointers didn't beat us. Now, does that mean the ones they missed?
Yeah.
The 35 3-pointers they missed? Or Kentucky going 12 out of 24? And somebody said, well, Kentucky only made 1 more 3-pointer. Well, wait a minute now. They shot 50% from 3. They shot 50% from the field. They were much more efficient on offense. Tennessee had a bunch of empty possessions because they kept missing 3-pointers. I thought 3-pointers were big. And late in the game, 5-point game, Tennessee's trying to make a run. They miss a 3. Kentucky hits a 3. It's back to 8. So I thought that was a factor. But I'll give Kentucky some credit. They're the only team in the country that's got 4 wins over top 10 teams this year, which is pretty good. But still, I thought Tennessee just kind of blew it. And the more I watch them, Dave, the less I like them because I just keep seeing more and more flaws.
Agreed. Portions of the program brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. You can get to them right down below. And as we introduce Jimmy Hyams as part of our Hyams Report, brought to you by National Fitness Center. I'll tell you more about National Fitness Center. But, Jimmy, I want to turn it to football for just a moment. My goal is later today to write a column ranking the top 3 to 5 biggest concerns of Tennessee's football team heading into this offseason? I think most would say offensive line, but Caleb said maybe the defensive line. So where would you rank the top concern and or concerns if you want to go a little bit deeper? And then we'll get some input from our message board. How would you rank the biggest concerns?
Two are very easy for me. It's almost like 1A and 1B, the offensive line and wide receiver. The offensive line, they only have one starter returning. They have not done a good job of developing offensive linemen. They're going to be counting on a true freshman at right tackle. And Tennessee does not have a good history under Josh Heupel and this staff of having first-year offensive linemen perform well. They're losing Cooper Mays, so I thought he was an all-SEC player. Spraggins was a good offensive lineman. I think the offensive line is a huge concern because I don't see not only replacing, but I don't see upcoming talent that I like other than David Sanders, the freshman. And it's hard as a freshman to play offensive tackle in this league. The other one's wide receiver. I see more talent at wide receiver. Therefore, I'm going to say offensive line is the bigger concern. But again, Tennessee's not developed wide receivers that they've recruited. You got Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams out there putting up huge numbers for Ohio State and Alabama, respectively. And Mike Matthews gets 8 catches, whatever it was. So I have concerns about their ability to develop these wide receivers. The third one is harder for me in terms of trying to pick it out. Is it at running back? You got Star Thomas coming from Duke. You got Peyton Lewis. You got Deshaun Bishop. Is it linebacker? Or if you don't have Jerron McCoy, is it the secondary? I'm going to lean a little bit toward linebacker. And that's certainly debatable, but here would be my argument. I think that they're pretty decent as far as run stoppers. I think they're very weak as pass defenders. I saw teams, in particular Ohio State, but game after game, isolating Tennessee's linebackers on somebody, receiver, tight end, running back. They couldn't cover them. And so all of a sudden, are they going to be able to cover them with basically the same players? I have doubts about that. So I'm going to put linebacker number 3 on my list, even though I'm hesitant to do that. But those are my top 3.
I was going to go with the Quattro as this, and Caleb, I want you to jump in. Ball's biggest off-season concern is I'm going to go offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver, and running back, not to besmirch what you said at linebacker, but I'd already punched it in. The Hobbs Report brought to you by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. The link is right down below. Caleb?
Jimmy, yeah, I want to go straight to the defensive line because I don't want to just say defensive line because I think they're fine at edge rusher. I think Jordan Ross is going to be as good. I actually think he'll be better than James Pierce, honestly. But what about defensive tackle specifically? You know, Amari Thomas is gone. I think Bryson Easton is gone.
No, Easton's back.
Oh, he's back. Okay, but Elijah Simmons is gone. Amari Thomas is gone, and Omar Norman-Lott are gone. A huge part of their defensive line success last year was being able to run so many different players. Are we sure they're going to be able to do? We don't know that they can do that this year, do we?
No, they're not as deep, but I don't know if anybody in the country was as deep as Tennessee on the defensive line, which I think plays well for this team because I looked at the defensive linemen that they have coming back. Caleb, they're about 7 or 8 that I like. Now, they're not going to be able to rotate like they did. But if you can go 7 or 8 deep on a defensive line, that's not bad. I like what they're returning. Now, don't get me wrong. They lost some really good players. But I think Joseph, well, you mentioned the edge rusher, so they're really good. But they got Hobbs, they got West, they got Weathersby. They've got some pretty darn good players. Eason, I think, is going to be one of the better players in the league. Very, very talented player. So I actually think they're going to be okay on the defensive line. Not as good, but I think they're going to be good on the defensive line because, to their credit, to Rodney Garner's credit, he played a ton of people, and he's got a lot of guys coming back with experience. So I'm not as concerned about the D-line as I am other positions.
Let me flip it to the other side at running back, and I will be totally upfront. I think I'm guilty of this. I think that Dylan Sampson benefited from an offense that fit his skills. So despite his size and all that sort of thing, I think he fell into the right place at the right time. That being said, I think they can replace him with Peyton Lewis. But regardless if you agree or disagree, Jimmy, I think we would certainly say with a smaller Bishop that depth could be a concern. It didn't crop up last year, but at running back it typically does.
It didn't crop up last year because Dylan Sampson was a warrior.
Yeah.
Although it cropped up against Ohio State. Now, because he got hurt and he had a hamstring injury and barely played in that game. I think Peyton Lewis is a pretty good running back. My concern about him is he does not have the burst that Sampson has. And that, in my opinion, is a prerequisite in this offense. You have got to hit the hole quickly in this up-tempo offense. And Sampson could do it. Jalen Wright could do it. To a certain extent, Jabari Small could do it. I don't know if Lewis has the quickness to do it. I think he's got more power than Sampson. So that concerns me a little bit. I think Star Thomas from Duke is a really good addition. Is he RB1? I don't know. I think he and Peyton Lewis will fight it out. Deshaun Bishop is a nice running back. Is he among the better running backs in the SEC? No. So I think they're okay at running back, but I think Sampson made them very good at running back last year. I'll probably give him, I guess, more credit than you do as far as being a very productive running back, because I saw him not only with a good burst, he put on some weight. He showed more power. He became a better pass protector. And so I really thought, well, he was SEC Offensive Player of the Year. I thought highly of Sampson last year.
Great.
Jimmy, to your point, how much do we underrate just the willingness to run hard with running backs? I mean, I go back to, because Sampson ran hard, and I go back to in the 90s, I think we all agree as a pure talent, Jamal Lewis was better than Travis Henry, but I thought Travis Henry was more productive at Tennessee because he ran harder than Jamal Lewis, honestly.
Jamal Lewis was more productive as a true freshman. His production tailed off the next 2 years. I don't think it ever tailed off with Travis Henry. Travis Henry ran hard, and he did it more consistently. Some thought, I heard this whispering, that Jamal Lewis was saving himself a little bit for the NFL. I don't know if that's true or not. But consistently, I thought Travis Henry was more productive. He's all-time leading rusher in Tennessee history. Jamal Lewis is a more talented running back. I'd take him over Travis Henry in that regard. But I won't argue with you about Travis Henry. And running hard, Tennessee talks about the +2, all right? And that means once you have contact, get 2 more yards. Whether you're Dylan Sampson, whether you're Deshaun Bishop, whether you're Jalen Wright, upon contact, get an extra couple of yards, which i.e. means run hard. And yes, I don't think that's talked about as enough. And I think Sampson and Wright and some other running backs at Tennessee have brought that to the table.
It's interesting. I want to turn it back to Nico, but or to Nico here in a second. But Jimmy, it sounds like to me that you think Dylan Sampson is more Travis Henry than he was Travis Stevens, which maybe I do. Stevens, I thought, fell in kind of the right situation with a great offensive line, but you're referring to Dylan Sampson, as you should, as the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, which is much more like Henry, who consistently ran hard all the time.
I think in that regard, I think Sampson is better than Travis Stevens. Travis Stevens did have an excellent offensive line. Do you think Tennessee's offensive line this past year was excellent? No. Do you think it was good as it was in 2001? I don't.
No.
And now,
they also sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and they also, back then, the teams had to account for Kelly Washington, Dante Stallworth, and Jason Witten in the passing game, too.
Yeah, they did. And so that worked against Sampson, right? Now, on the other side, the scheme at times probably worked his favor, because if you wanted to spread out with Tennessee, you would have an advantage in the numbers game as far as who you were blocking. And a lot of times, if you could zip through the line of scrimmage and get to the second level, there weren't defensive backs there to help oftentimes, which allowed Sampson to break off some long runs. But yeah, I would, as far as production, I would take Sampson closer to Henry, and I think he was a better back than Travis Stevens.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Do we so before we wrap this up, going back to a bit of a concern, you mentioned Tennessee secondary without Jermon McCoy could be a concern. Jamie, I got to be honest with you. I don't think Jermon McCoy is going to be where they need him to be at least till the end of September or October. And
you may be right.
I think that is a concern.
Yeah, you may be right. And history would tell you that's probably the case. Not everybody heals the same. But if he heals like an average human not an average human being, an average football player, because football players aren't average human beings. If he recovers like an average football player, and in particular his position, because you've got to have complete confidence in your cutting ability and your change of motion and your backpedaling, just like you have to have complete confidence if you're a receiver and have a torn ACL and you're coming off of that. So now take him out of the equation. I'm not real high on Tennessee at safety. Maybe you are, but I'm not. I do like Ricky Gibson at the other corner, but man, McCoy's the glue back there. He's the best player. And so I think if he is out now, well, you got Syracuse to open the season. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, so I'm not really sure how big of a concern that's going to be. But you got Georgia early, don't you? I don't have the schedule in front of me.
Third week of the year.
Yeah, so that could be a huge issue for Tennessee. So I think if McCoy is not ready to play or be productive in September, that could be huge for Tennessee because again, Syracuse may find a real good quarterback. We don't know in the portal. And then Georgia, I don't know how good Gunnar Stockton's going to be, but I got to figure he's going to be decent. And so, yeah, I think that could be an issue for Tennessee secondary.
I argue that we have the best message board in when it comes to Tennessee athletics. I'm not sure we have the classiest one. This comment, Henry, talking about Travis Henry, put tremendous effort in everything he done, including having kids. I don't know that we need to go there. Jimmy, you're move on. Just pretend that didn't happen. I saw you wince a little bit, and I was afraid you saw it in the message board chat.
Yeah.
Let's move on. All right. One of the things that we don't factor in when we talk about Tennessee and the upcoming football season is they suddenly have, after last year, having question marks at quarterback, and this was supposed to be the ascension of a superstar, and that didn't happen. But they have a returning starting quarterback. And Caleb, there are not a lot of teams in the SEC that can say that. It's basically LSU, Florida, and Jimmy mentioned South Carolina with Sellers. But Jimmy, how big of an advantage do you think that is when you rate the good teams, let's say ones that can win a championship? There aren't many that have returning quarterbacks. I think that's a strong positive for Tennessee.
I think it can be a strong positive for Tennessee, provided the offensive line is competent and these wide receivers play a lot better than they did last year. I was probably as disappointed in the wide receiver unit as I was any position on Tennessee's team. They dropped too many passes. They didn't often get open. How open were they against Ohio State? So I thought the wide receivers underachieved. And I don't care how good of a quarterback you are, if your wide receivers are subpar, then you're not going to be that productive. And I know a lot of people got on Carson Beck last year because he was kind of up and down. Georgia led the nation in drop passes. And I think that hurt his production. In fact, they led it by a large margin. So if he gets the supporting cast, and they don't have to be great receivers, they just have to be better than average. And if the offensive line's better than average, I think that is an advantage for Tennessee with Nico. My concern is, though, if you don't surround him with people that can be productive at receiver in the offensive line, that's going to mitigate his ability to have success.
Very true.
Yeah, and just to get the stat out there, the 5 highest ranked teams in the SEC that finished the season, Tennessee is the only one of those 5 to be returning their starting quarterback. Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama are all losing their starting quarterback. Now, I think you ask Alabama fans, and if you ask Kalen DeBoer, he's happy he's lost his starting quarterback. But the others, I do think, would be more concerned. Jimmy, in this era of the NIL and the transfer portal and star ratings and recruiting, have we kind of lost sight of the fact that returning a quarterback, like the situation Tennessee is, can still be a huge advantage? I mean, we thought the SEC was going to have a massive upgrade at quarterback last year with Nico Iamaleava, Jackson Arnold, and Garrett Nussmeier. And Jackson Arnold left Oklahoma, and then Nico and Garrett were solid, but not great. Have we jumped too much onto highly touted quarterbacks that have not started a year yet in this era?
Well, I can cite examples where the first-year quarterback at a program was excellent. And you're just talking about the first year, right? Like Cam Ward at Miami had a hell of a year.
Right.
Dylan Gabriel at Oregon had a tremendous year. Kyle McCord at Syracuse was tremendous. He led the nation in passing yards with over 4,700. So I think it kind of depends on the situation that you're in as to whether or not you're going to have success right away. I mean, how well is Carson Beck going to be? How well will he do at Miami? Well, here's another one too, and I kind of consider him a first-year guy. How's Arch Manning going to do at Texas? Is he going to blow up? Like a lot of people thought Nico's first year to start, he was going to be great. He was top 5 in the Heisman Trophy favorite and all that stuff. Well, Arch Manning's going to probably face the same thing, right? So how good is he going to be? I do think he's going to have a better supporting cast than what Nico had. And he's been around a little bit longer, so I expect him to be better, actually much better his first year than Nico was as Nico's first year as a starter.
Yeah, I would think that would be the case as well. How big of a jump? Let's just look at it this way, Jimmy. How would you grade Nico's performance? And I know he had issues at offensive tackle, but ultimately what he did. So I don't want to grade it on a curve, but at the end of the day, what would you grade his performance last year?
You said end of the day, and I thought end of the season. So if I could break it into 2, I'd give him a C in the first, 6 or so games. And then I'd probably give him a B+ the second half of the year. I thought he played well. I thought he played well the second half against Alabama and then carried that over. I thought he really got after it against Ohio State. He didn't have much help, but by golly, he fought. I thought he was one of the bright spots for Tennessee against Ohio State in that blowout loss up in Columbus. And I thought he had some other solid games along the way as well. So I thought the second half of what we saw to Nico can and should carry into the second half. I just think he needed some more experience, which he got. I thought he did a better job of seeing the field. I thought he showed some toughness against Ohio State and a willingness to run. So I think he's got a chance to be a really good quarterback if he gets the proper supporting cast.
Okay, so let me boil it down to this. Can we all agree that Nico was a B last year?
My overall grade would be about a B. I said a C the start of the year, B+ the second half of the year. A B would be, to me, fair.
Okay, so Caleb, are you for the purpose of this discussion, are you cool with a B? I'm cool with a B.
Yeah, I'm cool with a B. Totally.
Okay, so what are fair expectations in terms of a jump? Is it to just hold that B throughout the whole season, or do you think it's realistic that he makes a major jump to an A or A+, which is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, or at least one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC?
I would say a grade to an A-. And I'm going to go back to this. I don't think he's got the receivers to help make him become an A or an A+ quarterback. I just don't. So I don't think his numbers are going to be as good.
He might not have the interior offensive lineman either.
That's true. Yeah.
Which was something he leaned on, Caleb, that might be gone. I mean, the Cooper factor, don't forget that Florida game 2 years ago. Caleb, that was a big factor.
Can, though, Jimmy, in Josh Heupel's system, if receivers are not great, but I guess solid, can a quarterback still overcome that and look elite? Like, can a quarterback do, not to throw shade, but can a quarterback do what Peyton Manning did in '97 when Marcus Nash was his go-to receiver, and we found out Marcus Nash turned out to not be that good if you look at his NFL production?
Well, he was really good in college, though. Same with Joey Kent.
Was he good, or did Peyton make him good? Is what I'm saying.
No, I thought they were
good.
Could
Nico do that?
I thought they were good. Well, they got open and they caught passes. Okay, so that's more than I can say about what Tennessee's receivers did this past year. So to your question about if they're just like above average receivers, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. If they're just above average, can Nico?
Yes, he can. He can put up big numbers doing that. He can, and not necessarily and I know this is a different conversation probably, but with rare exception, Tom Brady wasn't blessed with great receivers at New England. He had Branch and Brown, and he usually had a really good tight end in Gronkowski. But he had 1 year with Randy Moss. Welker was a pretty good receiver. So was Edelman, but they weren't, in my opinion, elite. But to your question, yes, if those receivers are B- receivers, then Nico can put up big numbers and have a big year.
Good stuff. So we think that a half a grade to 3/4 a grade is realistic, but I don't think. Caleb, do you see an A+ out of Nico, and that includes the guys that are around him?
I actually think an A to A+ is possible, but it's going to come down to something we haven't seen that Jimmy brought up at the start of coming on here, which is we have not yet seen Josh Heupel develop offensive players for the most part that he signed out of high school. And he has yet to start an offensive lineman at Tennessee that he signed out of high school. And this is the year 5 is the test for him on that. If that's still an issue in year 5, then I think there become real concerns about Josh Heupel long term at Tennessee.
And Caleb, to follow up on your point, I don't know if every year you can just go into the portal and throw in offensive linemen and have B offensive lines. I think you look. One of the best offensive line recruits I had in recent years, highly rated, was Addison Nichols. And where is he? He's a starting center for Arkansas. How did he get away? So I mean, I just if I think Heupel's done a wonderful job. Okay, but if I were to ding him, it's the inability to develop offensive linemen and the inability to develop wide receivers that you recruited.
Yep, hit it. Nailed it. Jimmy, have a blessed day. We certainly look forward to visiting with you next week, and I'm actually going to hold my lunch appointment for once, so we look forward to that. And Jimmy, if you can, tell us about what he doesn't believe me. He doesn't believe me.
Lunch appointment? Okay.
A little bit of crazy time in my life, Jim. I appreciate the mercy. Yeah, you are rocking it on the YouTuber there. Tell us about what we can check out on Full Disclosure.
Yeah, well, our most recent one on Full Disclosure was an interview with Bob Kessling. We have got an interview lined up with Trevor Bayne of NASCAR fame. He won in his rookie year. He won the Daytona 500. I think that was 2011. So we're interviewing him. Actually, we're interviewing him tomorrow. After that, I've got an interview lined up with Jim Haslam, and I want to talk to him about General Neyland. That's the primary topic. There's nobody that can talk about Neyland like Jim Haslam. There's nobody that knows more about the general. I think that will be a really good topic. And Jim Haslam's mind, he's like 93, 94 years old. He's still sharp as a tack. So that's the next interview after Trevor Bayne that we have lined up. So I'm really looking forward to getting his take on the great General Neyland.
Jimmy, I have a question for Trevor Bayne, if you would like to throw that out there.
Sure.
Okay, one morning on the lead lap, brought to you by Atomic Motor Speedway. This is back in the day. This is before Bayne actually won the Daytona 500, and I was covering him as a small racer out of Carnes. I texted him. I said, "Hey, Trevor, do you care to jump on this morning?" He had done something the Friday before, and he said, "Sure, I'll come right on at 10:25." So we lined that up, and then I got a text back from him that said, "You have a good night last night, baby?" And I said, "Trevor, I think you sent this to the wrong person." And sure enough, he did. So my question is he still with that young lady?
I don't know, but your last name is what?
Oh!
I have no idea. I'm not.
Yes. He could have been listed as Destiny Hooker. Oh,
no.
Oh, wow.
Jimmy, I have no idea. I think Trevor's a fine young man, Dave.
He is. And he's telling me to bank somewhere that I'm happy with commercial bank, but who knows? Jimmy, have a blessed day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a good day.
Have a good one, Jimmy.
Joining on. Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise text I got from him. And that was a bit surprising. We appreciate Jimmy being a part of the program. It's brought to you by National Fitness Center. It's that time. Unmatched value, limitless option. Begin your fitness journey today. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be right back. Shane Beamer just signs an ultra long extension, and I think that's good for Tennessee. And I don't know that Josh Heupel, however, is going to look at that and his agent's not going to think, where's mine? Stay tuned. 2 minutes. Beamer sending ripple waves through the SEC.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep, boop, beep, bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300 or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. ThanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
This is the time of year when you sign up a coach to a 5-year contract, preferably backloaded, whether or not you believe in him or not. And the reason you do that is because you have a 5-year career in college football, unless you're really good or really bad. The guys in the mid are always going to have 5 years, a redshirt year, and soon to be, this is going to be 5 years flat. That's what I've been told by sources close to the NCAA. It's just going to be 5 years to play 5, not 5 years to play 4. And that's rules got kind of messed up with anyway, because it turns out you can just appeal the NCAA and play 6 or 7 years. Who cares? But it's going to be 5 to play 5 now that we're getting past all the COVID issues in eligibility. So you give these coaches 5 years, even if you don't believe them. But South Carolina just gave 7 years to Shane Beamer. And I don't want to get into the intricacies of this contract and whether or not it's backloaded or not, whether it's a hollow 2 years at the end. Caleb, the bottom line is South Carolina and Beamer wanted to make this statement that he was the long-term coach at South Carolina. Now, I never thought South Carolina would be knocking on the door of the college football playoff, but I'll say this, and I believe it firmly. Tennessee's in better shape with Shane Beamer as the head coach of the Gamecocks than not. So this might be a good thing for South Carolina fans as they try to become relevant, but South Carolina needs flexibility, unlike other schools like Tennessee, Alabama, and on and on and on. Georgia, of course. They need flexibility when their roster ebbs and flows and things go south, and they will eventually under Beamer. They need to be able to make a move. And right now, I question whether or not they can do that with a 7-year contract. If Shane Beamer is the head coach at South Carolina, the Vols will win for 7 years. The Vols will win 5 or 6 of those games. I have no doubt in my mind, Caleb.
Assuming how many times they play over the next 7 years. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I want to be clear on this, where this is a big advantage for Tennessee. Shane Beamer is in a situation right now where his profile is overinflated because he's landed. Dave, this is the classic case of a coach landing an elite quarterback and being made to look a lot better because he's got that quarterback for a couple of years. You've covered a lot of teams like that, haven't you?
Butch Jones.
Yes, Butch Jones landing Josh Dobbs. Shane Beamer landed Lenora Sellers. The kid was from South Carolina. He wanted to go to South Carolina. He really fell into Shane Beamer's lap. And so he's doing well because he's got an elite quarterback. He's not going to be able to maintain it. The minute Sellers is gone, Shane Beamer won't be able to maintain the success. And when he won't be able to, he'll start to struggle in recruiting. So you are right. Tennessee should be very happy about this because whatever he's doing now, I don't think he's going to be able to do it consistently long-term. And I'm insisting this now, guys. With Clemson falling, South Carolina on a sugar high right now that's not going to last under Shane Beamer. 7 years by 2027, from 2027 to 2030, Tennessee is going to be out recruiting South Carolina and Clemson in the state of South Carolina as they were in the 90s, Dave. It's going to be 98 all over again. We talk about their North Carolina pipeline. I think South Carolina is going to come down to Tennessee and Bill Belichick, and they're going to fight out for South Carolina prospects with Shane Beamer in South Carolina and Clemson falling down a little bit.
Okay, so let me throw you this question. Should the Vols give Josh Heupel a fat new contract? Yes, 7 years. Yes, 6 years. Or no, just the typical 5, which is what is typical. Now, he's going to get a new contract because you have to tack that last year on the end. It may be a pay raise, it may not. But I'm completely fine, and Josh Heupel should be, whether he knows it or not, with the typical 5-year, because they just re-upped and paid Tim Banks as defensive coordinator a lot of money. We haven't heard of coaches going elsewhere since Alex Golesh did, and I think that Josh Heupel kind of wanted to run things all himself on the offensive side. So I don't think he lamented that, but keeping Tim Banks should be a part of your pay raise.
Yes, absolutely. Keeping Tim Banks should absolutely be part of your pay raise. I think Tennessee is going to extend Josh Heupel. Right now, he's got a contract through 2029. They're going to make that go through 2030 soon enough. I think you and I both agree with that.
No, I don't agree. Oh, 26, 27, 28, 29. Yeah, no, that's 5 years. I'm good with that.
Yeah, give it to him through 2030. I think that's what they're going to do. The 5-year thing is fine.
Beamer's through when?
It's through 2030. I'm laughing that they gave him the extension because I think that Beamer is going to collapse over the program. And they gave it to him before beyond 5 years. I think it's 6 years now. So, and I think Beamer's going to lose control of the program at South Carolina. And it's going to be laughable when he does. I think Heupel's 5 is fine. They haven't re-upped Heupel since 2023. You know he's going to demand to be re-upped a little bit. He's going to say, I just got Tennessee to the college football playoff. So he has some leverage too. But, I mean, you can't blame him for doing it. He should ask for a raise. He has every right to do so. But I do think the biggest impact on Tennessee this has is that Shane Beamer, I think, is on a sugar high and cannot coach.
Okay. The question that I want to throw out there is Beamer at South Carolina good for the Vols? Yes, he's bad. No, he's good. In other words, you want a bad coach being the head coach at one of your key recruiting areas and potentially, depending on how often they play, one of the programs that Tennessee will face off in from time to time. We don't know how the scheduling goes. I would feel even stronger about this if they were an annual opponent. Wouldn't you, Caleb?
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely feel stronger about it if they were an annual opponent. But not being it, I still think they can recruit the state, so you want Beamer there. The real question, the telecoin is, let's just ask Dabo Swinney what he thinks about Shane Beamer. And if he's like, Shane Beamer's an amazing coach and South Carolina should stick with him, I bet Dabo would say that. Then you know he's not a good coach. I think Tennessee fans should want Shane Beamer to stay at South Carolina. This is going to be, again, this is a sugar high right now. That's what they're on. And so once Lenora Sellers is gone, and he'll be gone after next year, I think it's going to collapse under Shane Beamer. And Tennessee's going to be able to start recruiting that state heavily.
Okay, so are you hot or cold on Shane Beamer, number one? Are you hot or cold on Josh Heupel getting a big raise, which we think that he might do? We at least think he's going to get a bigger contract. And it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, hot or cold, off the hook sport.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
All right, Caleb, hot or cold? First, you're a South Carolina fan. Are you hot that Shane Beamer got a huge, monstrous contract extension?
No, I'm cold. I'm cold on that if I'm South Carolina. And I don't think they are.
I'm hot because I think that's the best they can do. I really do. I think South Carolina.
They had Steve Spurrier for a decade.
Well, that was a special circumstance. North Carolina is going to have Bill Belichick for 5 years, but that's
they had Lou Holtz before Steve Spurrier. They had Daffy Duck.
Yeah, he was totally. I mean, he was totally beyond. I mean, talk about jumping the shark. He didn't know how to recruit or do anything at that point. And he wasn't a very good X's and O's coach at that point in his career. He was never a great X's and O's coach. He was a great recruiter, and that's what Notre Dame took from him with their strict standards. All right, if you're a Tennessee fan, are you hot or cold on Shane Beamer getting an extension. I'm hot.
I'm hot. I know that once Lenora Sellers is gone, I'll be able to go into that state and pluck out anybody I want after he has one bad year.
Okay. Josh Heupel gets a big contract extension and a raise. Are you hot or cold on that?
Hot.
I am too. I think you lock him up. I think you can put it into the verbiage, and maybe South Carolina did this as well, where it's backloaded, and if he doesn't last, then you move on. But I think he will last, and I think it's a coach that you want to keep around. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. I'll be shopping my Bronco here momentarily. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.